Sharks. My name is Matt Gronberg.
And I'm Sam Chasen. We're here today seeking $250,000 for 5% of our company, Storage Dollars.
Oh, guys.
Hey, Supers. Welcome back to another Shark Tank Tales. I'm your host, Super Joe Pardo, and today I have a super entrepreneur here who was just in the tank about a month and a half ago, back on October 14th, which was episode 4 of season 14 of Shark Tank. So whatever you're doing right now, I need you to stop what you're doing and give some loud super claps for Super Sam Chasen. How you doing, Sam?
Dude, doing incredible. It's been a pretty wild ride since the episode airing. So kind of crazy to think about. It's only been what 5 or so weeks since then. Life has been on fast forward. So, but happy to be here.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy that you were able to take the time to be here today. I'm glad I was able to take the time for you to be able to be here as well. But let's get started as we always do. What was your relationship with Shark Tank prior to getting to even think that you were going to get to go on Shark Tank?
Yeah, I mean, it truly was like a childhood dream for me. That's the show that I watched with my family Friday nights, whether it was live in the beginning or DVR at the end. It was, I probably have seen 200 plus episodes, and then of course during the application process rewatched a similar amount of the episodes too. It became kind of like game film, right? So we wanted to go into the show, have the best possible performance, and just that came at like watching hours and hours and hours of the show and making sure we were prepared for pretty much any question that was gonna be thrown our way.
You know, it's amazing to see so many people that grew up watching the show now like coming into their own. I mean, when the show aired in 2009, how old were you?
So I was born in 98. So,
oh wow, okay, so you were like 11.
Yeah.
That's awesome though. I mean, that is super, like it's incredible to see the ripple effect that it has amongst generations of people, not just older people that were already 30 plus or 40 plus 50 plus at the time in which the show started to air, but now having all these different entrepreneurs coming through that are in like their 20s, and being like, yeah, I grew up watching this from the time that I mean, I'm sure there was TV shows you watched prior to that, but like probably not to the extent of 200 plus episodes and wanting to enact out answering any questions you could possibly have for being on the show.
Yeah, I mean, transparently, it's probably the show that I've watched the most episodes of ever in my life. I'm not like a TV binger where I've seen like a show 3 or 4 or 5 times. So that's a show that's probably the only one that I've actually have watched multiple episodes multiple times. And I mean, it's a show that, if it's on air and you're in a foreign country, it's like, oh, I'll watch it with the family. It's Shark Tank. So it's a crowd pleaser for sure.
It is. I mean, it's always incredible to me how they're all businesses, right? To a certain extent. Sometimes they are just products or literally just getting off the ground, but they're all businesses and they all should be talking relatively the same language. And yet every single pitch is so unique and so different that it is intriguing to be able to just binge watch. I mean, that's one of the things that people love doing on this channel is just binge watching the heck out of the channel because it's just, pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch, story after story after story. And it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old.
Yeah, and it's definitely, after having watched so many episodes, I mean, there is some intricacies, but a lot of it is kind of a highlight reel. Like, you'd be surprised how many questions, of course, they did ask on the show that weren't aired. Like, when I go back and watch the episode, I just rewatched it yesterday, obviously before this episode too. And watching it again, it's actually kind of crazy. Like, half the episode was the negotiation, right? I mean, they asked like 4 or 5 questions, right? And when we were actually on the show, it was an hour plus, and we got peppered with questions straight for 45 minutes from shark here, shark here, shark here, shark here. So interesting in the way that they actually ended up chopping it up. And I think it definitely painted us in a quality light. Because there were that many offers, they definitely wanted to air that. It was like an interesting, exciting part of it. But watching all the different episodes, you're not going to get all the questions that you'd potentially be asked on air. I mean, it's essentially like a normal VC like Q&A, right? So you want to go online and say, hey, what are the questions that are asked on Shark Tank, but also like, what are just the top like 300 VC questions you might get, and those are the ones that we studied. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, a lot of people don't realize that they're there for, you know, 45-minute plus. I mean, longest I think I've heard is like just over 2 hours there on the carpet, and that's like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, sometimes the Sharks are too impatient, or it seems like they're, you know, it's like, no, they've been sitting in there for a while. Like there was probably a long gap where they just kind of like stood and stared off into space while they were crunching numbers in their head. And like, does this make sense for me? Which I'm a big proponent of. Figure out what those potentials are, as many of those potentials as are, and have answers for those potentials, you know, those potential offers. Like, what if it's 100%? What if it's, you know, 80% or 40% right there? Like, you know, and you come in asking for like, hey, I'll give you 5% for our, you know, 500,000. And it's like, oh, well, what if they come back and it's like, you know, 30? No, I'll push them back down. No, well, maybe, but you got to have a lot of great answers for them. And that's one thing the live episode really, really exemplified, that like the Sharks are talking over each other and stuff. And a lot of people did not seem to love that. And it's like, well, you know, this is a highly edited TV show. So you're not seeing all of that. And you can hear it. Like, and I'm sure you've picked up on this, Sam, like watching that many episodes and that many pitches, like you can hear the Sharks talking over each other. If you listen closely in certain points, in certain pitches, you can hear like somebody in the background that they tried to like cut that mic, but it still came through because they were talking so loud.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, with something, that's definitely like a feeding frenzy like they talk about too. So not only did we have questions prepared, but like you just said too, we had every single scenario of, hey, this equity asks for this money, this equity asks for this money. And we had to go in there and say, hey, like this is our hard line. Things are going to get wild. Emotions are going to get high. You're going to get excited. You have a celebrity shark saying, hey, I'm going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars for a piece of your company. Like Mark even said at one point, he's like, you know, it's not about the money. And when you rewatch that again, it's kind of hysterical to watch. Like, so we went in there, it was like a hard line. Hey, we're not going to give away less than 15%. And I think that's also kind of why when Robert gave us the offer for 20, there's of course room for negotiation there. But Mark was the target shark when he gave us something under 15% with the money that we asked for. Like, you know, that's like the negotiation room that we have. Let's, you know, not focus on another shark that is, you know, 5% above our ceiling already. Let's just go after the one that's already 3% below. So.
Yeah. Well, so we'll get to the more into the tank in a little bit, but did you apply to be on Shark Tank, or did they find you?
No, so yeah, I applied during my senior year of college back in, I guess, technically 2019 into 2020. We went through a couple stages of the application process. At the time, I was like, oh my gosh, we're like pretty much on the show. And then the pandemic hit. They were supposed to get back to us in 2 or so months, didn't get back to us for like 5 or 6. And it was pretty much, you know, just good luck next year, you know, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're not even doing the Shark Tank for this year. And of course they were. So after having then gone through the application process 2 years later, we were definitely not at the end. So I applied in 2019 technically, and then applied in 2021 in December, which then was mostly 2022. And it was a part-time job for about 9 months. And then including even after the filming aspect too, the swearing to secrecy and trying to figure out, hey, like how do we schedule certain aspects of our business growth, not knowing when we're going to air. Are we going to air in, you know, end of September? Are we going to air in March? Like you have no idea. So there was a ton of buildup there, a ton of work done both pre and post our actual filming of it to try to get the most value out of it. But I would say it was at least 5 hours a week for like eight months combined of the work, from application to video submission to additional video submission to like live pitching, recorded pitching. They would give us homeworks is really what they were. So it's like you're in school again, which is kind of hysterical.
The irony of that being right up against you leaving school and taking on a second job that's, you know, second part-time job that's you know, could be like the biggest turning point in your life, you know, getting to be on. And I think it's ironic that you said, you know, I thought we were so, you know, we were getting close to being, you know, we're basically on Shark Tank at this point, and then it you know, dissolved on you. I mean, from what other Shark Tank entrepreneurs have divulged into is like, you don't know, like I mean, you just don't know. Like you could have, you know, your pitch could have just not made it for some reason. There was something that they didn't like, and then they just never aired it. So even if you get there, it doesn't necessarily happen. Even the people that were on the live show, they had backups there, you know, there who maybe those people will reach out someday to have a conversation with me. But you know, even the Curie lady from Curie, like, she didn't know until 2 hours before she was supposed to be there that, like, oh yeah, you're the fill-in, and like, come on down, like, let's go. And she's like, I'm on top of a mountain right now. Like, okay, let me run down this mountain and then get in my car, and like, I didn't even have time to shower.
Yeah, it was interesting because like we'd already spent a ton of time in that first year. And then once I applied the second year, 2 years later, kind of on a whim. And once we'd invested, you know, 50 plus hours in this, it's like, you know, it's like we have to, at this point, just dial in, right? You have to believe 100% that you are destined to not only be on the show, but do an incredible job. Because not even just going on the show, airing, and getting a deal or not. It's like we can go on the show, air, maybe even get a deal, but it's like a really terrible viewing for us, right? It's a bad performance. They're making fun of us. It's a blood sucking deal, and we get roped in, end up saying yes because it sounds exciting, right? So we decided, you know what, when an assignment came in, when Shark Tank would reach out about anything, regardless of what other people were saying, we took it extremely seriously. This was top priority. We were working on a deal with the university. We were hiring someone. It's like, Shark Tank came in. All right, cool. Like, that's what we're focusing on. And because at a certain point, it's like we now spend 100 hours, 200 hours. Like, is this all going to be lost and have nothing to show for it? Like, no, let's actually do it. Let's do it right. Let's kind of gamify the show as much as possible, in a sense, to try to make sure we do have the airing, the deal, and the positive press and PR.
You know,
it worked out.
And clearly it did. But we'll get to all that later. You know, the one thing I've taken away from a lot of these interviews that I've done is even if, you know, nobody's talked about the specific amount of hours that they've had to put in to get this. And I always ask, like, about the balancing that plus the business plus family plus other you know, the girlfriend, the significant other, the whatever, the boyfriend, whoever's important in your life, you know, the dog, the cat, the turtle.
Sure.
You know, but looking at it from a time investment standpoint, you know, I do you feel that you were better off even if you didn't get to air, just going through all those questions and maybe, you know, prepare? Because I mean, obviously you grew up watching Shark Tank, so you were more prepared than some other people that had like never really watched it or watched it a little bit just in the last couple of years, to be able to answer those questions and then apply that knowledge to what you're like, oh crap, like this number is definitely not looking like it should, and I thought it was, but when we went and double checked, the math didn't check out.
Yeah, so there's definitely some numbers. Like when you're running a business on your own and you have no investors, there's things you kind of just make assumptions on sometimes and go with a gut check on it. So it forced us to get a lot more legit and granular about mostly like our numbers. And actually, as a result of going on the show, we had somebody that was recommended to be kind of like a fractional CFO, and we've now since hired them from our experience working with them too. So there was positive effects there. And if we're currently not raising capital right now, and we weren't before, but in the weeks post the episode, or even post like airing and such like that, and filming, we would ask a question about, you know, what's your blended customer acquisition cost, and like just to have that offhand. From a sales perspective, and also just knowledge of the business and just confidence going into a season in which we're going to be doubling our operations, doubling our reach, like investing in dollar that we've made in this company back in again. It's important to have not only the actual facts at hand, but have peace of mind to say, yeah, I know we've been growing and we've been saving money, we've been making more money, but in reality, saying, okay, our customer acquisition cost has gone down, $7 based on that. Okay, cool. Now we can confidently go back in and spend 3x on those paid ads this year, and not just like, let's spend 100 grand and hopefully it works. Last year we spent 50 grand. No, it's spent $128,000. That's the direct return that we need. So it's good. It's made us become a lot more students of the game as opposed to just going out there and making a splash.
Well, I wrote a book called Sales Won't Save Your Business, and it's all about those numbers that, like, you can always sell, but you're going to leave a mess behind you. And if you're not tracking that mess, you're very likely to start falling behind and not even realize that you're like that you're actually like, hey, we made all these sales, like, cool, but like we have a money problem. We still can't pay the bill. We can't pay the bill still. What the heck is going on, right? And so it's a lot of like little things like that I think is by challenging yourself and trying to find not only like the customer acquisition costs and the generic numbers that a lot of businesses that go on Shark Tank are asked about.
Sure.
But like making up your own metrics, right? Your own key performance indicators, your own KPIs, right? To be able to say, oh, well, look what we were able to accomplish, and maybe get super granular to something that like maybe a shark wouldn't ask you because they don't know to ask you because they're not in the furniture moving, college game.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely, I think, a lot of stuff on the recruiting side that was important to dial in on because initially, and that was like that's kind of our biggest challenge, right, is people, like in any business. But for us going out, initially it was, we're going to go to alma mater, we're going to kind of network out geographically or through, hey, I have a friend at this school and he's got a little brother at this school, and like that's a school that we should go to now. But dialing in on exactly what our metrics were for going on to a campus, like our cost to get to that campus. And that's a factor of, hey, what's the cost to actually like get those supplies? But more so, hey, historically we've hired, let's call it 10 people across 5 campuses, and then right up at the finish line, like 2 of them will leave, whether it's because they got COVID or their final exam schedule got too busy or they physically got sick, or like there's a variety of things to kind of get some specific metrics on, hey, this is what's going to happen when game time comes, and here's how we can over prepare, and not just, hey, let's hire 3 people instead of 2 on a campus this year. It's like, what's the actual number behind that? And of course, everything's variable. Every campus is different. It's a person that you're talking about, right? So you can't predict. Math's not going to solve all of your problems, but every dollar matters at this point, and to get it even just one step closer to finding that sweet spot is super important for being the most profitable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, do you find that you have a I don't know if you would know the number, but like a higher than like your turnover rate is, do you feel that it's higher or lower? Like say like in the last year, like have you been able to track any of that knowledge to know like what can I do to get better at not having people quote unquote get sick or just disappear on me there?
Yeah, so the number of people that churn from something that we did is essentially 0, right? Like we've been able to talk to a kid. There's a couple scenarios in which, hey, it's coming down to it. I think that, like example, like my final exams are way more important, and then we're working with them. And like the expectation was to work this many hours and do this many things. Instead of you quitting, let's scale it back. Like it's more important, at least from a business perspective too, that we have some presence, given that we've been working with the last like 5 months, than to start all over from scratch, right? So, I mean, the other thing that's more important, right, is that it's more of the natural turnover. So we'll hire a sophomore, junior in college, and they'll crush it. They'll love us. We'll love them. They'll be doing incredible things. And then they're a senior, right? Or they graduate. So in comparison to a regular business, to have people in like a somewhat of a best case scenario, like freshmen are great, but oftentimes kind of like a sophomore is the best person to hire because they've already had 1 year of experience of actually like doing a move out. Because if you hire a freshman, it's kind of hysterical because they've never actually done the move out before, right? And they've never actually taken their first final exams. They're in the target demographic that we're trying to appeal to, of saying, hey, here are the huge pain points that you have. So we've had the most like overall success with a sophomore. They've already gone through the process. They know what's going on, and then they work for us maybe sophomore, junior year. And by the time it gets to senior year, they're like, I'm not going to do the move out, not the move in. So they work best case scenario like around 2 years, maybe 2.5, and they pass off the torch. So turnover is very aggressive, which is why we're kind of working towards some different methods to lower that turnover and more so just increase the customer life cycle. So those sophomores and juniors can help us advertise to incoming freshmen or maybe graduating seniors too. So it's a little more value. So we get some more bang for their buck.
Yeah. Well, I think a key point there, you said very early on, being, trust. When you have somebody you trust, it's, you're willing to work with them. And we have people at our repair shop that, have scaled back their days of the week that they're willing to work because, they're not, 25, 30, 35, 40 years old where they have like a lot of need for as much money and they're like in their 50s. And it, but it's like we trust them to that level. It's like, yeah, okay, like we're going to concede here because we don't want to lose the well, in this case it's the expertise, but in your case it's the trust factor of like somebody's going to actually show up, somebody's going to actually do what they're supposed to do and not damage the thing, lose the thing, steal the thing, set fire to the thing, like whatever the thing is. Like it's so important that you have that trust and to be able to get any of access to that trust, I think is more important than like, yeah, we need you to work like 60 hours a week and that's part-time for us.
Yeah. I mean, to dial on that real quick too. I mean, fortunately we've never had any issues with, people stealing things or in that sense, but no, but at the same time, yeah, no. But at the same time, you're absolutely correct, right? Like if we've worked with we're managing all these operations remote. Like I'm not going to High Point University and helping out with the move-in, right? So when we're hiring someone and we're hiring them potentially in the fall, right? And then we're interviewing them, we're getting them excited for the spring. We're doing weekly calls with them January, February, March, April. Like you said, it's the trust, right? It's for us to know that I'm not going to go to sleep and wake up the next morning and they're going to be gone. I don't really care about this anymore. They've already invested so much time in us. We've invested so much time in them. They're not going to quit on the finish line. And obviously having to rely completely on college students for an operation has been pretty scary. So we're kind of weaving in some other methods to the madness to make sure this is fully scalable and kind of putting people in their respective categories where they can operate in best. But that's also why you don't just have one person on a campus or two people on a campus, right? We'll have maybe 3 to 4 people in leadership, and then below them they'll have 20 to 70 movers, right?
Wow.
And that mover might have worked a season or two prior. So worst case scenario, if somebody does get sick or they twist an ankle or something like that. When it comes down to the actual operational side, fortunately, we've built out the technology where it's, hey, figure it out. Hey, follow the website and go through, walk to this room, take this picture, bring it on this truck, bring it over here. So it's kind of foolproof in that sense, and just making sure that we have someone that's going to put a smile on their face, show up on time, and the rest kind of falls into place after that.
No, that sounds like you got some good systems in place there for the fact that you are working with college students who, have a lot of things going on themselves. It's not like that it's just them worrying about moving stuff. And it absolutely sounds amazing to have that many people operating on per campus. I mean, that must mean that you guys have quite a few people signing up for your services to be able to support that.
Yeah, it's and college students are incredible. Like, I mean, the things that some of these kids do is crazy, right? And that's the reason why we're all so successful as well, is across the board we can have, hey, like here's the things that work really well for marketing, for operations, right? But every campus is a different animal and a different beast. So it's so important to have that sophomore, that junior that's in the target demographic. They're on campus. They not only know how to like get around the best, know the best routes, but they know, hey, you talked about, setting up a table outside the dining hall to advertise to kids, like that's just not going to work here, right? Like we should just go directly to the fraternities and sororities and speak at their chapter meetings. Or another school is like, no, like they don't allow like kids to come in and speak at the chapter. So it's incredibly important to have them. They're the reason why we are so successful, and it's that personal touch also as well. From, hey, you have your 18-year-old daughter, they're moving out. Think about, as a parent, what's your most recent moving experience? Like, who's showing up at your door? Maybe you don't want that type of persona showing up in your daughter's dorm room. So now let's have, this person that's in your daughter's chemistry class is the same age, come up and show up. So full spectrum. There's a ton of value on both sides, and we're providing a ton of value to them. So it's just making sure that we use our expertise to have as much fallbacks as possible to make sure the customer never suffers, which they haven't, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point about the accountability aspect too of the students going to that school. So like, obviously you would weed out anybody who wouldn't necessarily be desirable to have in your company to begin with. But so that's one safety check, right? Somebody doing some kind of safety check there. They're also attending the school, so like, if they did something that was not okay or good or whatever was the thing, they they could lose their scholarships and their opportunity to be at said school. That so that's like a whole nother like safety thing, plus the legal ramifications, plus the lawyers or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many aspects of safety than just having like literally anybody show up to do it who doesn't necessarily have skin in the game, if you will, for that school.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, because when you think about it too, let's say we have 300 kids sign up on a campus and you have 2 leaders there. I mean, there's a good chance that at least 20 to 30 at a minimum are people that these college students know personally. So for someone to just like not show up on their scheduled move time on the Storage Scholars website, the first instinct is, hey, let me text X person that I know works for Storage Scholars. They're my friend, or they're on the website, or I've seen them out on campus. So there's a double level of accountability there, which is played great for us from both a customer acquisition standpoint, but then also customer retention, but also like an employee retention. And they're not just going to not show up on that day, because it's their professional reputation as well as their personal reputation ends up coming into play.
Oh, absolutely. So jumping back into the tank, or heading towards the tank, how did you work out your valuation offer before going into the tank?
Yeah, I mean, it was based off of a revenue and a profit multiple, and at the same time too, something that actually wasn't even, when I think about it too, it probably would have been awesome to have this as part of our negotiations, but there's some other intangibles that were at play. Like, one was, you're right, there's no one else in the space that has this custom technology that they're building from the ground up. So it's hard to put a value on that fully, but we kind of gave it a dollar amount. We did a revenue multi, added that together, as well as, hey, like, here's what we're planning. Here's what we like the growth we've seen these last 3 years. Let's very, very conservatively show where we think we're going to be the next year. And let's kind of factor that all in together. I think a lot of people are like, hey, our projections the next 2, 3, 4 years for X. Like, ours was, hey, here's the concrete numbers. Like, I didn't actually think our valuation was fully out of the stratosphere by any means. But I mean, the valuation we got, I think, was definitely undervaluing the company in some sense. But that's you're going to get a haircut regardless if you go into the Shark Tank.
Yeah, I mean, that is generally the takeaway, is that you're not going to get something, so you need to work be able to have flexibility. And you went in with $250,000 for 5% with your partner Matt, which I didn't think was too out of the realm overall. But as we've seen, time and time again, the more hundreds of thousands you add, right, the higher that number is, the less likely you are to get a deal, regardless of percentage. Sure. Just because the amount of risk, they're not willing to like throw $500,000, $500,000 at every possible like business and hope for the best. Especially when we're talking about like 5% or anything under 10% when you start getting up there. But But no, so you end up with 4 offers, which is dingworthy for sure, because not everybody gets to go in there and have 4 offers to work with. You alluded earlier that you were looking to work with Mark. So was that was the goal from the get-go? Like whatever we got to do to get Mark on board here?
Yeah, I mean, if we had a shark that gave us an offer at the valuation that we presented, like we would have gone with it. But Mark had the most relevancy to our problem, right? Like he super gung ho about college debt and like our mission, and that's the website collegedebt.com. It's a live counter showing the college debt crisis in comparison to the credit card debt crisis in America. He also has a couple college adjacent investments. And at the same time, his daughter's a freshman at Vanderbilt, right? So, I mean, like the first thing he asked us, like literally within 15 minutes of us getting off stage, was an email from him being like, "Hey, can you move my daughter into Vanderbilt this year?" So I think that's a school that we're expanding to this year. He's obviously an Indiana University alum, like working with Mr. Wonderful. Like we're based in the U.S. right now, so like we couldn't even use necessarily like someone like his alma mater, leveraging that right away too. So he has, I think, somewhat of like the biggest star power, just because he's invested in the most the wealthiest. I mean, he owns an NBA basketball team too. So it's from a direct relevancy to the problem, our mission, as well as us going out and trying to like recruit different college students on these campuses, have the biggest name, the biggest face behind it, I think was most important to get the best value out of this episode.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. I mean, when you look back at the offers that were on the table, they all wanted to be at 20% for $250,000, and I have it here. I guess Kevin and Damon offered $500,000 for 40% at one point, which yeah, I don't like to laugh at offers because I mean it's something. But that was just pretty unrealistic. And your reasoning for wanting to go with Mark, I think was very valid. And he does. I believe he speaks at a lot of universities and colleges as well. So he has a lot of those relationships that would be great. Plus, again, the NBA team thing, it definitely puts a cool factor towards students that wouldn't necessarily know or maybe even care who any of the other sharks are.
Yeah, I mean, like before this episode, right? We were storage scholars. Like we were trying to be the Uber Black of moving and storage, but that's something you have to really be a customer to get that full experience to understand like how valuable we are. So to be able to have you could call like on a college campus the clout, right? Hey, we are a Mark Cuban backed Shark Tank company. It's already increased the level of like applications that we're getting, but not only the level, like the number of applications, but it's the quality, right? Like beforehand, we may have been presenting an offer for a spring internship to a student. They have storage scholars to compare to, and then their traditional, what's called their traditional banking internship. And for them, it's like, I really need to go with the banking internship or whatever one's relevant to their major, just because it has that much more clout on their resume. So now that we have storage scholars, Shark Tank, Mark Cuban, we've already seen some people be like, no, I actually would prefer to work for storage scholars because it's a name that's recognizable, right? I mean, you can go out and you can work for $1 billion company, but if no one knows the name of it, like on a resume, and they have to do research about what this company is, it's less valuable, I think, in like an open marketplace and saying, hey, I was a solutions at Apple, right? Okay, everyone knows Apple. It's easy, it's relatable. So being relatable to a college student from an employment perspective was kind of our biggest goal out of the episode.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It definitely is recognizable. So you get 4 offers. You take a deal with Mark Cuban, who saw the value to even be able to go down to 5% over what your asking was, and you walk out. You guys are feeling great. What's some of the first things you guys did once you left the tank?
I mean, in the moments following, right, it was still very surreal, right? Like, did that really just happen? Like, you're on TV, right? Like, you're in the studio, and you walk out, and we got out at like, you know, 8 p.m. and we got in there around, our call time was at 10. We didn't get out till it was dark, right? It's kind of a whirlwind. Like, you wake up the next morning, you pinch yourself. It's like, I've been preparing for this moment and visualizing this moment. Yet when it actually came, it's like, did that really just happen? Like, this is my childhood dream. Was I really just on Shark Tank? Are we even going to air? Right? Like, there's still then, it's like, as soon as that, like, you get over that hump of, it's then the next goal. Okay, well, now let's make sure we do air, right? So let's make sure we can get this deal closed. So let's make sure that we, it doesn't leak out and no one else finds out. So potentially that's why we don't get aired. So it just became, what's the next job? What's the next goal? What's the next objective? Which is kind of the mindset that we've been living and breathing for this company, honestly, my life and Matt's life, the last 24 plus years. So hey, we put all this work in, we got here, now let's just go here. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's go here. Let's reap the most out of this opportunity.
And so so when did you record? Was that in like July or?
Yeah, it was mid-July. Yeah. And then
so you're probably kind of pretty busy right after that too, like, gearing up for the spring or fall, I should say.
Yeah, and that was a big thing, right? It was kind of making sure it was a balance, right? Once again, it was, hey, we invested all these hours. We could have been spending now, because we filmed in July, but there was of course a ton of prep and practice that was happening in June and May, and that's our peak season. We're like, do we spend these 10 hours this week going out and maybe making another $20,000-$30,000 in revenue and like spending that time doing that, or do we just double down on Shark Tank and say, hey, like, this is our top priority? And it was a fine balance. We ended up just working more probably. But at the same time, it was, hey, like, we really believe that long term, the effects of this episode, the effects of this deal, of this partnership, if done correctly, are going to be more valuable than the short term gains of some more money, and kind of finding that balance not only for ourselves but also with our team, right? And then kind of stepping up and be like, hey, they're working on this special project. Like Matt and Sam are off doing their own thing right now, and we're gonna make sure we're handling the business is incredibly important. I mean, thank goodness we have the team that we have, and at the end of the day, like, thank goodness it worked out, right? If we'd gone on and it flopped, right, we fumbled the ball, and we mumbled some questions, and they made fun of us, and they said this was a joke of a business, and they laughed, right? Not only it didn't help us, it actually hurts us, right? Like, we laughed about a joke, and it was all that time invested. So super important that we had a good result, and I think at the end of the day, it fortunately the risk paid off.
Absolutely did. Yeah. I mean, the time investment, I mean, time is the most valuable resource we have. And to be able to invest it in something like Shark Tank, or, if it's your own, going for a VC or pitching anything to anybody, right? Getting anybody on board with that, with your team, I think is super valuable. And I think I think it speaks volumes to you and Matt that you were able to have your team in place, that and have the trust that they were going to continue to operate without necessarily having you guys right there. And I mean, July to October is not that long. Like, it might sound like it's a long way away, and it could have been. Like, you could have been airing in like May. You could have been like one of the last episodes of the season.
Yeah.
So it could have been that long. But I guess my other question to go with that is did you have a lot of work on the server side? Was it your brother or Matt's brother that developed the technology? Your brother.
Yeah.
So did you have a lot of work on that side to get prepared? Because like a lot of these companies that go on Shark Tank are using Shopify, and Shopify doesn't have that problem of like, our site goes down, like, because Shark Tank happened and they hugged the website and it goes dead. I mean, did you guys have to bolster yourself at all, or you were already more than prepared?
A tremendous amount. I mean, there's a lot of work put into the what if factors, right? Including even like making the sign up process more bridged, right? Or reconfiguring the landing page and having a lot more of like, hey, come work for us as well, and not just hey, sign up, because this was airing in October. People would be signing up for the services more so for like a May move out. This is still months and months in advance. So I mean, transparently, we did a lot to set up to have, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of viewers on the website. And in reality, I mean, we maybe got 15 kids actually signing up to use the service, which, I mean, this is 8 months in advance, so that was kind of to be expected. But it was more so making sure that we were ready to, if the traffic was on there, are they getting a good view, a good vision of Storage Scholars? Are we capturing some of their emails or phone numbers and stuff for follow up afterwards? Because we know most people aren't going to make a purchasing decision, 6, 7, 8, 9 months in advance, right? And so I think that the value of Shark Tank is still yet to be determined fully. Of course, I mean it's a lifelong process, but it's not like we went on the show, we sold out our inventory, right, of cardboard boxes, right, like the night of the episode. Which was nice that we didn't have to prepare in that sense. It was more of a virtual preparation than like a physical inventory preparation. When we had our customer service team on like for like 24/7 for the Friday, Saturday, and the Sunday, just in case we were getting a ton of calls, and we didn't want to be the company that doesn't answer the phone on Sunday, even if it is just grandma calling and saying, hey, like this was an awesome business, like good job, Storage Scholars, and hangs up the phone. Like we want to make sure we're there for that. And so we were prepared. Nothing went down, and I mean I think we're still excited to kind of see what is and having more full transparency of really what we are and who we do and how that's going to affect what this year brings for us.
Yeah, I mean that is a big a blessing in disguise, right? Like you don't necessarily have that sellout moment, but when I was talking to Krish from Duamore, I should say. He didn't have that issue either because not everyone's getting engaged tomorrow, and so it's or getting married tomorrow as well. So it's like you get that you do get a push, but you're not necessarily getting seeing like instant sales, like boom, 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 boom. Man, I can't wait to get all that money into the account quick enough. I can't get it in the account quick enough versus like. It's 6 months down the road, it's a year down the road, maybe it's 4 years down the road, because my kids are in 9th grade and they're not going to college till for another 4 years. So it's just one of those things. And then the replay of ability of the episode. I mean, getting to land a deal with Mark. Now, speaking of that, have you closed your deal yet with Mark, or are you still in negotiations / due diligence?
Yeah, so we should be closing in the next probably week or so. I mean, really, the most complex thing has not been a negotiation back and forth with like him and us. It's actually more of like a formation documents and how that affects us tax wise and restarting our clock for different tax benefits and such like that, and us becoming educated on that, making sure we're doing the correct thing and not just kind of rushing into it. Because fortunately, like the money that we got, we don't need today, right? It's more of a money that we'll be using in the springtime. So we haven't had to rush in that sense. And Mark has already been available to us. It's not like, hey, I'm not going to talk to you until you like officially close your deal. So that also value I think is yet to be fully discovered, because it's like, hey, here's what he's helping us with now. I mean, I'm assuming, hey, he's probably going to help us a lot more once he's actually like officially invested in the company, because of course we could pull at any point, but we're not pulling out. We should close in the next couple of days. So it's ironic that this is the episode we're having right now. I mean, we're emailing back and forth the last couple hours, but yeah, no, it's that process of course was similar to Shark Tank, where it's long, man. Like it's not a hey, you sign on the dotted line. I mean, they sent us documents. We probably could have just signed and been closed in a couple of weeks, but it's your first time investing. I mean, this is your baby. For us, we've been working for 6 years. This is not something we're going to sell tomorrow. So you want to make sure you fully understand what you're signing. And for him too, it's like in most traditional VC senses, like it's actually an absurd concept that we walked into the tank and that was the first time they'd ever heard about Storage Scholars. So there was still a lot of questions to be asked of, okay, like, here's what we heard on the episode, like, here's what you said on the episode, but really, like, what are the actual true numbers behind it? What is the true actual value, who's actually working. So there's some due diligence there. So they've gotten over that hump from the Radical investment side from Mark Cuban's team. So now it's just making sure that we're closing the terms in the best possible way.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, the other thing is just I would say seeing that you're seeing it through. You know, that you're not like, hey, we got the deal, we did it, we worked hundreds of hours to do this, we got the deal, ding, 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 ding. All right, let's just sit back and we'll just kind of see what happens.
No one. I mean, the biggest lesson, right? Not biggest lesson, but no one's going to do the work for you, right? Whether it is, Mark Cuban, whether it is like your mom or someone else that's like excited about the business, like no one's actually going to do the work for you. They will guide you in the right direction. They will help you open doors, which has some intangibles to that, and that's the reason why we're on the show. But it's not like Mark's going to go out and start cold calling schools for us and be like, hey, like here's the company. So and then the same thing happens with the deal terms, right? Like this is Mark Cuban. This is like he's invested in hundreds of companies, right? But they still have to do their due diligence. We still have to do our due diligence and making sure that it's a deal that's best represented for him and for us. So no, it's the work is never ending. It only gets more complex. It only gets more difficult. I think just the playing field raises, and you get more used to doing things at a higher level, and your bar just continues to raise.
Yeah, and speaking to Mark, I think my understanding is that there is other people that he's invested in have had a really great experience working with his team and emailing him at like 5 o'clock in the morning East Coast time, and then answering in like less than 10 minutes is ridiculous. Yeah, it really is. I think that goes a long way for making you feel good, because my great grandfather always said, like, a hard deal is a bad deal. And, if you felt like you weren't being taken care of, or that you were not even taken care of from like the deal standpoint, just like getting a bad taste in your mouth right out of the get-go, it's like, oh, well, is this how it's going to be once the paper signed? Maybe I don't want to do this, maybe because, like, as you said, you don't need the $250,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. I'm not trying to downplay it, but like in the grand scheme of things, $250,000 is not much money, right? Like you could get loans to make that happen. We're talking about the price of like a small house here in the East Coast. It's not like $250 million or something. You know what I mean? It's not some astronomical number. So, it has to be a good partnership, a good working relationship with the person that you're opening your doors to, and inviting in to work with you, even if they have a minority share and like ultimately couldn't do a whole lot from an ownership standpoint. I think it's important that you feel comfortable and that he feels comfortable, because it's him interviewing you just as much to see if you're going to be a pain in the ass or if you're going to be mostly keeping up your end of the bargain.
Yeah, I mean, I think you talked about a couple of really important things there, right? So he said answer in less than 5 minutes. It's actually absurd, right? So at the same time too, it's just as much on us. It's more so on us, right? Like his biggest complaint, like, that our team has told us, is that he doesn't hear enough from the companies that he's invested in. Like he's doing this because he thinks it's really cool, right? Like it's relevant to him. He's excited for him. At the same sense, like $250,000 is not a ton of money, so he wants to be involved as much as possible. So like he lives in Dallas, we live in Austin. Like if we drove to Dallas tomorrow, I'm sure he'd meet with us in person. We've actually talked with a company that has invested with Mark, and they live in Austin. They say, hey, we have like biannual meetings with him in person. And if we emailed him every day, like he's never not responded to an email. So if we emailed him 20 times in a week, like I'm sure he'd respond. So it's as much as we put in, it's as much as what we're going to kind of get out of it as well. So he's got to be educated. He's got to know what's going on. He's got to stay updated. Because at the same time too, if we ask him for advice on a big deal, but he hasn't heard from us in 6 months, like he can give us his anecdotal advice on, hey, business wise, I think this is a good decision. But if he's not in the day to day and being updated as to what's going on, like his advice is not going to be as relevant. So we've been really still making sure that he is up to date on exactly what's happening, and at a minimum giving him these kind of weekly call like investor updates too. So that way the advice and the guidance and such that he gives us and the doors that he opens are most pinpointed to exactly the stuff that we need.
Yeah, look, I always say entrepreneurs are professional problem solvers, and Mark has a ton of experience, right? But like, I have a ton of experience, and lots of other people in business have lots of experience. But without that information, right? Without being in it as much as possible, you're just not going to know. It's like Elon wouldn't have been able to fix all the issues with the Tesla, like the Tesla supply chain and the conveyor belt, not the conveyor belt, the assembly line, right? Issues if he didn't submerge himself into being on that assembly line day in and day out, right? To understand the real issues and then figure out the root of those issues. Just coming in and being like, yeah, just go do some social media, Sam. It'll be great. Have fun. And you're like, oh, okay, but why don't we take a look at what I'm actually doing currently, and then we can like see how that can be better, right? Versus just saying, yeah, go do social media. It'll be great. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and so to like close that point too, it's been really promising. And I'm really excited about working with Mark. I mean, he's dedicated. He's, I think, addicted to business. I know he's addicted to business. And so to have us be part of his portfolio is not even just from like a brand notoriety standpoint, awesome, but like we truly have conversations with him, which is awesome. And once again, too, not just because like that's so freaking cool, like, but at the same time, it's also very valuable. So there's always two sides to every part of this, and fortunately, it's been in the positive direction from what I've seen so far.
Speaking of so freaking cool, tell us about your watch party. What did you guys do?
Yeah, so I live in an apartment complex actually with Matt, and we were looking for different venues. It happened to be it was the Friday of ACL, Austin City Limits, which is the biggest like music festival in Austin. So from the standpoint of people flying in, people getting accommodations, and also us booking venues, it was probably 4x expensive, or as difficult as it would have been for a different weekend, which was interesting. And also too, it's like we didn't know this like months in advance. Like, this is, hey, you get the call, you got like 2-3 weeks to prepare this, and not only are you trying to prepare like the business, right? But now you're also like, do we want to get the most out of that opportunity? But it's, hey, like, do we want to actually not only enjoy our watch party, but also get a bunch of content from it too, to be able to use for years to come as well. So we were looking for venues, and it worked out serendipitously. They were actually filming like a TikTok outside of our pool, and a fellow entrepreneur, he essentially does Topgolf, but for baseball. It's first time to ever do
cool.
it. Yeah, super cool.
Is it off of like a tee, or is there like, how does that work?
It automatically pitches to you, and you swing
like
it.
Pitches like
this,
upward, and then you just smack it.
It shoots up, okay. and you, yeah.
That's awesome. I want to do that.
So yeah. So that's super cool. So he actually let us have. It's called Home Run Dugout, and they have like this space out at a AAA stadium, about 30 minutes away from where we lived. So we got access to the stadium and his aspect of like the building, and it was rolled up doors looking out onto the field. There was massive screens, obviously just like Topgolf, right? So the actual video itself was hundreds of inches like projected up in front of everyone. We invited probably 120 people. 5 of them said they couldn't come because they were like maybe school administrators or someone. Everyone shut up. Every single person. Like, I think we got some feedback too about, hey, let's make the location super close, like to downtown, or let's have it like a really dope location, 30-40 minutes away. It was kind of like the equivalent of having a destination wedding. It's like, who's actually going to show up, who's going to make the effort. But having it in Jamaica is way cooler than having it, in downtown in some like college bar in Austin, Texas. So it was super emotional, honestly, and incredible to see the dedication from friends and family that everyone showed up. Wow. And it's, once again, like, I'm just getting goosebumps telling the story now, because sometimes you don't think back to it. And everyone helped too. Like both me and Goosebumps again, but like both me and Matt and I's girlfriend, like creating a ton of content leading up to the episode, like post episode, setting up the party and like making the invitation, getting the food, like our friends picking up the food and parents coming in, like cleaning up. I mean, everything was a ton of work and a ton of pressure for us as well. But to know that we had an incredible support system there. I bawled, I cried during it. Like it's also crazy to think about that we'd never seen the episode. So part of it as well was, hey, we're super excited. We're inviting our family. I think we did well. Like I think like we answered these questions great. Like I know we got a deal, but we also still don't know how are we going to be depicted on TV. It's an hour long of filming, and they narrowed it down to like 9.5 minutes. Like what are they going to clip? So to watch it live for the first time with like 100 of the most important people in our lives around us, truly, it was insanely emotional, incredibly gratifying, and it's for sure a moment I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I sure imagine you will. That is, I mean, that sounds absolutely awesome that you had people to be able to help and to be able to host it in a really cool location and have people show up. And I don't understand how do people say no and then show up anyway.
Well, no. So everyone that said, basically, like we sent out, let's say 120 invitations, 5 people said like, no, we can't come. And then out of 115 that said yes, like every single person showed up. Like,
oh, wow. I mean, okay.
And I think we just weren't even expecting everyone to like, yeah, I'll come fly in. Right. And I'll go. Or also this is because we're in Central Time too. So it was decently early on a Friday too. And some people like left work early to make sure they could get there on time. Cause doing much research as possible, we found out we were going to be going first just based on where we were like presented on the summary of the episode. So it's like, shoot guys, like you come late, like you're going to miss it. Right. So people had to come on time, be there like 30 minutes before. And yeah, it was awesome.
You're welcome for the goosebumps. I forget what was I going to ask now. How did my video end up coming up on your radar?
So we were monitoring egregiously, like the just kind of like the natural SEO and postings and such that come up, and you can't search on YouTube and find like a full clip of it. So yours was the most relevant video that came up, and then of course we had so many friends and family DM us. I mean, somebody texted me like a week and a half ago, and they're like, "Hey, like I just saw this. You know, he asked you to be on, you know, to come on his episode." Like yeah, no, I definitely saw it. Like, probably one of the first people to see it. So yeah, we were searching Google, YouTube, I mean, like social media. I mean, like we were on NBC, like the article, but then like, you know, we had a posting in NBC's Made It Instagram, right? And like that was a result of just searching and also just friends being super like on top of it and getting things on their feeds and just sending it to us and us trying to repost it and once again just get the most out of the experience as possible.
That's absolutely. That's what I do every Friday night. The Shark Tank slide.
Yes, sir.
You know, to get it. I mean, I get it up before it airs on the West Coast even. So for me, like it's a ritual at this point. Like I have everything like a well-oiled machine get it all up because every minute that goes by that it's not online is a minute lost because the East Coast gets way more traffic than the West Coast. Like the West Coast is like a day. They're usually like the next day. Is when like if you looked at the search traffic for the businesses and stuff, it's definitely more towards because like they're watching it at like midnight East Coast time, or you know, since it's all 9 or 8 o'clock. So I'm sorry, 11 o'clock East Coast time. But by the time people are actively searching for it and stuff, it's like you're already into the next day East Coast time, and it just keeps like cascading like that. But no, that's awesome. It's good to know that my call to action is working. It's or continuing to work. So ding ding.
Ding yourself. Yeah, I mean, once again, I mean, first of all, also like thank you for taking the time to do this and making this an opportunity for me in the post episode, but also giving us notoriety, giving us like a place to send friends and family that didn't have like a Hulu subscription of, hey, where can I watch the episodes? Like, hey, just go on YouTube and you'll find
Skip
it. This
past
guy
the guy
Joe.
that's talking. It's okay. It's all right. I
Yeah.
know. It's okay. He appreciates you watching anyway, and if you stick around, that's all the better. But it's appreciated.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's been overall a great experience, right? From the application to the airing, to the filming, to the airing, to the post airing. It's probably all that I ever could have imagined. But then there's also things that you can't imagine, right? And those are the fun gems, the fun surprises, and something like this, right? Like transparently never seen your show before, right? And I definitely will be a viewer of it afterwards. There's a personal connection here too. But people have just been super, super like gracious with their time and their energy, and there's just been so many doors that have opened up as a result of this. Um, and it's exciting, right? And I think that this is 4 or 5 weeks after the episode. I mean, what's going to happen 4 or 5 years later, right? Like, where are we going to be at? What's going to be the trickle effect when this is still airing afterwards too, right? And you said that ninth grader that, saw it for the first time. Now they're going to be a college freshman 4 years later. It's like, oh yeah, oh now that makes sense. Yeah, got it. Cool. Yeah, I should definitely choose Storage Scholars, right? I mean, we were watching the College Hunks Hauling Junk season 1, episode 1, like to try to figure out like valuations. They're a very different business from us, but it's the only like moving company that's been on there too. So it's cool to see that come full spectrum as well.
It is. It is. I mean, look, I always say that doing this show and podcasting and blogging. I mean, I've been doing all this since '96, so 2 years before you were born. I've been doing this.
Good for you.
10 years old, writing about video games on the internet and bringing communities of people that love video games together. To me, it's all about the people. It's all about the relationships. No matter what community, no matter what I've done, it's always about the relationships, the conversations. And I always say, like, I don't really read books. I'm a slow reader, but I read people and I read those stories and learn from those experiences. And I love to share those experiences with other people because I think that's one of the easiest ways to learn. And if you're a slow reader like me, then this is an opportunity to do so. So I appreciate you coming on, Sam, and I wish you and Matt both the best in this endeavor. And please tell everyone where they can go to get their stuff moved, or their kids' stuff moved, or their nieces or nephews or grandchildren stuff moved.
Yeah, check out storagescholars.com. You can go on our website. You can sign up there if you're interested, not only for getting a move, also if you know anyone that wants to move, or anybody in the education space, right? Like we sell and make partnerships with different people in the school administration. So you can go on our website on the contact page as well. And hey, I want to apply to work. Hey, I know somebody that might be interested to you. Go on there, check us out. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, LinkedIn. Ton of great spot to keep updated on our journey, but appreciate the time.
Absolutely. I what's funny? It's dark websites are like a mystery to me. Like, I've done tons of web design over the years, and I always feel like whenever you use black as the background, it's like the hardest. It's so much harder than white. So have you found that at all? I mean, I don't know. You're not designing the website, or are you?
No, yeah, I designed it for sure. It was I got a ton of feedback from like a conceptual standpoint that black is super difficult, and it's incredibly hard to have the readability on there, and also like dark mode versus light mode on people's phones and such. But same time, every single time somebody goes on the website, they make some sort of comment on it. And I think having a lasting impression is super important. And we really are trying to be like the Uber Black, the luxury version of a moving and storage company. I think there's a lot of moving and storage companies that have white websites and they're orange and blue and green. It's like no one had a black website. So wanted to stand out not only on campus, but and keep our brand presence consistent across the web. So it's been difficult to actually make it work. would love to double click on this offline if you have any feedback on it. But it's a talking point, right? So that's been the most important part so far.
Well, look, it's good to stand out, and be different. It's just, I always find it hard to read black text on or white text on black, right? And but with that said, I like dark mode. Except for the fact that when I don't, because you're like, oh, I'm using this app. Oh, this is dark mode. And then boom, like the one that's not dark mode is like, blinding you like a flashbang going off in your bedroom. It's so tough. A lot of times I try, like, I'll just dim the screen because like I don't want that effect of like, oh, everything's dark until boom, you go to a web page that's not dark, or you go open up a new tab and it's like it doesn't conform with the dark. Like, I don't understand. Dark mode's been around for quite a while now, probably like a decade. How is it not a thing, like a consistent thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and that gets even more complicated with like our email campaigns and stuff that we're sending out. Like something you don't even realize, like we'll maybe put our logo at the top, right? And it looks super clean, right? But then when someone's phone is dark mode, it inverses, then you can't even like see the logo, or you see then this like square outline that we had no idea that looks super messy and disgusting, right? So I think maybe more so like getting ahead of it and just making our website dark and always playing to both sides saves us from having different pictures and text and stuff like that that look great on my screen because that's what I see it on, and then it doesn't translate from dark mode to light mode.
Well, just from thinking about that, right? Having a dark website, like just the example I gave about being in the bedroom, using your phone, and boom, like it's super bright. If you have a roommate or roommates in the same room, it's like I'm going through the website and trying to book my stuff in the middle of the night while everybody's around me might be sleeping. It's one less thing that's like bright and obnoxious to everybody else who's trying to sleep.
Yeah, and also for us too, it's like people aren't spending hours on our website, right? And we have a lot of video content and we're trying to push them. Like we've oftentimes we're capturing people from outside sources, a lot of like in-person traffic too. And the website is more of a point of legitimacy. Hey, they do have a website. Hey, how can I get to the sign up button the quickest as possible? And actually, if you click sign up, our portal, like the sign up process too, is not dark, right? It's white. So the part that they're actually right, like the part that they're actually engaging with, right, where they're like putting in, hey, the details of my move. Here's where I'm uploading my photos. Like the part that they're actually using from a customer standpoint over and over again is in white, so it should be easier to read. So it's more of a branding thing from the front end of the website.
Yeah. It just stands out to me because like anytime I've ever tried to build a dark website, because I think dark websites look cool, like from a just an aesthetic point of view, but it's just so like like we said, it's just so much harder to build for because you get things that have like white borders around it. So then you got to go and make sure that those white borders are cut out because otherwise it's gonna look, like an example might be like this box here, right? Like there might be an extra white border around it that you couldn't see. Well, if there was like an outline, I guess, of the box and then a white border, like you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't have to worry about it on a white background. But or even buttons, anything basically becomes a problem unless you're custom building all the graphics to go with it or editing those graphics to be there. But yeah, no, we can talk about that. That is, I didn't even realize your site. You click sign up now, and then bam, you get the blindness.
You get the flashbang.
Yep, flashbang in the eye. So anybody, I apologize to anybody who was watching this on their phone in the dark, and it was kind of like, it wasn't that bright, and then I just brought up this big screen of white. But No, but Sam, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here today, and it's been awesome. I'm glad we were able to fit it into the schedule, and again, good luck. And if there's anything I can do for you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll be in contact. I'll let you know if I'm down in Austin at some point. Maybe I'd like to. I have a couple of friends down there.
Cool.
But if you're in the Philadelphia area at all, coming to any of the Philadelphia area colleges, let me know, man. I'm in the area.
Cool. UPenn this year, so we'll definitely be around
Oh,
there.
sweet.
My brother also just moved there too, so I'll have a reason to be up there at some point in the next 12 months. So
Well, let me know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying we'll go get some cheesesteaks. Hopefully, Jim's on South will be open by then. That's my favorite.
Love it. Well, Joe, I appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. And thank you for making it all the way to this to the ending of this episode of Tank Tales. I don't even think I said that at the beginning. Tank Tales at the beginning of this episode. Anyway, I'll see you in one of these two videos. If you haven't watched Sam and Matt's pitch, click up here. If not, I'll see you in the one down below. Take care and Kobe Super.